The following show is brought to you in part by support from Robbins, Kaplan, Miller, and Cerisi. We don't just practice law, we make history. Online at rkmc.com.
Hello and welcome. Tonight I'm talking with the man who was the head coach at the University of Minnesota in the track and field and cross country department for 33 years. My guest is Roy Griak, who still works full-time in those departments as an administrative assistant, fundraiser, organizer of all kinds of things. And I want to say just a few things about some of your honors, Roy, before we really get going. In terms of questions, Roy has had some very special honors. One of the neatest was that he was inducted into the Drake Relays Coaches Hall of Fame, which is a very prestigious Hall of Fame, and that was in '93. The nation's largest cross-country meet was renamed in your honor, so now it's the Griak cross-country meet, which is a national meet for. It's held in the fall, isn't it?
Yes.
Every November?
Every last weekend, full weekend in September.
Oh, September, okay. There was Roy Griak Day a few years ago, and that was something that R.T. Ryback designated. And I understand that your team from 40 years ago were kind of instrumental in getting that started, which is a neat honor. You grew up in Montana, came to northern Minnesota, and let's find out more about your early days. Right now, you said your folks were both from Serbia.
Yes, they were from Yugoslavia at that time.
Ah.
I was born in Butte, Montana. As an infant, we left for Duluth. I really don't know at what age. My father had an opportunity to work in the steel mills in Duluth, and we left the copper mines of Montana to the steel mills of Duluth. And I was really raised in Duluth, Minnesota.
And you were the oldest of four children?
I was the oldest of four children, and we lived in the several homes, different homes in Duluth at the time till we got settled. My father got, from World War I, he got his bonus from World War I. I was able to purchase an old rattle old home with an outdoor bevy and built a new home for the family. And he died at an early age, at age 48. And my mother raised four children during the Depression.
Did she work during those years?
No, heavenly no, she didn't work. There's no jobs available at that time during the Depression. She had a job taking care of four kids.
Sure.
Who were all growing up from 7th grade on down. And so her full-time job was the children. We had about 3 or 4 gardens in which she toiled in all those gardens, and she canned everything. And
so you got by on just a little, didn't you?
That's right. During the Depression, it was very difficult.
Did she encourage you to go to college? Because you not only graduated from college, you got your master's, and to her that must have seemed...
No, Mary, no. That was the furthest from her mind. Yeah, we didn't have any money to go to college. The only reason I was able to go to school is that I was in the service during World War II. And with the GI Bill, I was able to go to the University of Minnesota in Duluth for 2 years and transfer to the University of Minnesota, Minneapolis.
When you say World War II, Roy, I just want to stop and tell the audience that you are older than you look. if we can say that as a great compliment, you're 86.
That's right.
So World War II was the war in your time.
I graduated from Morgan Park High School in Duluth in 1942. And right after that, I was drafted out of high school, right after high school, and served in the infantry, 24th Division, 21st Regiment, Company E. My serial number is still 37588725. And
That's a number you never forget.
Never forget that number because you repeat it 500 times. And I went from Duluth, Minnesota to Camp Roberts, California, Camp Roberts, California to New Guinea, New Guinea to Leyte to Mindanao, Mindanao to Mindoro, Mindoro to Japan and home.
Were there some things about being in that war, in the service, that transferred in your mind in terms of making you a good coach?
Well, certainly the thing you learn from being in the service is keep your head down, first of all, if you want to come back home. And you have to be able to go with the flow. You have to be able to take orders. If you can't take orders, you can't give orders. And it's a matter of teamwork. It's a matter of helping your buddy and vice versa. It's a matter of caring for the guy next to you or on either side of you or whatever. So I think all those things in life are the same. Whether you're in the military service, whether you're coaching, whether you have a family, whether whatever you're doing, you still have to care. And if you can't care and you can't take orders, you're never going to be able to give orders.
You were an athlete yourself, so you learned in that regard too, in terms of what a good coach does and what makes a good coach.
Mary, I think it's the same thing anything you do, whether you're baking a cake or whether you're with people. You have to have the right ingredients, so you have to recruit. You have to love to bake and cook, right?
Right.
And if you have to love people. And if you love people and you're enthusiastic and you're an organized person, I think you can be whatever you want to be, providing you have the ability and the intelligence to do whatever position you're thinking about.
You used the word persistence earlier too, saying that the importance of persistence as something that makes for a successful athlete, a successful coach, a successful cook, anything, right?
Well, I think you have a right attitude. You have to have the attitude. You have to hang in there when it's difficult and appreciate what you have. Mary, we haven't touched on this, but I first started coaching and teaching at Nicollet High School. That was my first teaching job. And I was there for 1 year. I coached 5 sports that year.
Wow.
I got paid for coaching basketball, 6-man football, and baseball. And I started track and field and cross country at that school and also track and field. Besides having about 3 preparations for a salary of about $2,000 a year.
You earned your pay, didn't you?
Yeah, you sure earned your pay.
Wow.
Then next year I went from there to Mankato for a year and 10 years at St. Louis Park. And the rest of my life I've spent at the University of Minnesota.
And St. Louis Park was where you came first in contact with a man who became a wonderful Olympian athlete, Buddy Edlin.
Buddy was sort of an overweight sophomore, and when his mother made him come out for track and field because he was a hell raiser. He was about 20 pounds overweight, and after we shed about 15, 20 pounds after Buddy, he became a tenacious distance runner. He wasn't a stylish runner, but he had the intestinal fortitude, the internal motivation. It was nothing that I did, nothing that his mother did. It was not external, it was internal. He wanted to achieve, and he became a very, very fine distance runner. Of course, he ended up setting a world record in a marathon after he left the University of Minnesota, and was a brilliant runner for Coach Jim Kelly at the University of Minnesota.
You must have had some sense, though, that there were things you did that were part of the reason he was so successful.
Well, he had, like I said, Mary, he wanted to succeed in something. He was driven. And I think you have to have it. Anything you do, I think you have to have a passion for it. If you don't have a passion for it, it's not going to happen. And even if you have a passion for it, doesn't mean you're going to be a success.
That's an interesting point.
You still have to have
some
other things
talent,
going
don't
for you.
you?
Absolutely. You have to have things going for you, too.
Passion, talent, hard work, those all make for a successful athlete. Do they also make for a successful coach?
Anything in life, not only just coaching, whether it's anything in business or whatever you're doing. When you talk about coaching and teaching, I was maintained in sport on any level. If it's not an educational experience, it should not exist.
You mean if you're not learning from what you're doing?
If you're not learning, you can learn as much in track and field or in basketball or football or anything else as you can in the classroom, but it's a little bit different. But it's still, you either can be successful or not. And all depends how passionate you are for it, how much time you want to spend at it. Do you have the courage to continue when it gets tough? And all those wonderful things that you learn in sport or you learn in the classroom, that it's life.
Did you have the passion to be a coach from the beginning, from those early days in Nicollet and then St. Louis Park?
I know, Mary, you ask about having a mentor.
Right.
My mentor was my mother, who didn't know any around ball from the football.
So she wasn't a mentor in the specific skills related to
mental,
coaching.
the work ethic, the love, being persistent, having a passion. You learn from her. And you learn, and nowadays, kids have organized sports. When I was growing up, during my time, in the 40s, we learned by doing. We didn't learn from others. We learned from our buddies. My buddies were my mentors. If I learned how to dribble a basketball, I learned from somebody else, not some guy at some school. Or if we had a baseball bat, when it broke, we nailed it together. If we had a baseball and the seams came loose, we waxed the string and fixed the covers of the balls. It's a lot different situation now. I think it's too organized. I can drive past some fields in Plymouth, Minnesota on a Sunday afternoon. They got beautiful diamonds, but there's nobody playing.
Not like it used to be.
In my age, we would have climbed the fences to play. And so it's different. I think, and Mary, this is not going to be one of your questions, I'm sure, but I think, you hear so much about obesity.
Right.
Okay, that's a big topic.
Michelle Obama's cause right now.
Yeah, big topic. All right, what are we doing about it? We cut out physical education in junior highs.
Doesn't make sense.
In physical education, and you got nutrition, you got health, you got skill, you got all those things, courage, how to do this, how to do that, how to move, being a helpful person, being competitive, and all those things they cut out when you're really learning in the 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade. I know I'm a track and field buff. I'm also a basketball buff. I'm a football buff. I'm everything. I love sport. And every junior high in this city of Minneapolis, St. Paul should have a 200-meter track.
What do we need to do to make that happen
Well,
as citizens?
what we have to do is You know, we talked about with the $400 million club in Minneapolis. What are they doing for the Minneapolis schools? All talking about building stadiums for this and that and that. How about that poor little kid in the 3rd or 4th grade that does not have a playground to play in? Where's the instruction coming from? Jumping rope, hopping on one leg, hopping on 2 legs, or dancing, or running backwards, or going over an imaginary hurdle, or whatever it might be, throwing a ball, talking about nutrition, talking about diet, and all those things. That should be done just like an English class, a Spanish class, a math class, or anything else. So what do? We wait till they get in their sophomore year in school, and do they have a requirement now? I don't even know. But that should be a regular subject like anything else in the public schools.
So more attention to being physical and carrying it on all the way.
They talk about health and costing more health insurance through obesity and so on. Well, we're not doing anything about it. Why don't we tackle the problem where the problem is? Not when they get to be 11th and 12th and 35 and 40 years old and they can't move out of a chair.
I like what you're saying. I want to ask you about your greatest challenge next as a coach. What was the hardest thing for you? And maybe it's what you're just describing now, witnessing our country's focus that's maybe in the wrong place. But what would you say was the toughest thing you went through as a coach?
If you love what you're doing, Mary, it's nothing tough.
You can get through anything.
It's not a job.
And that's why you're still working, I'm guessing?
Yes, I'm still working. You know, if you have a passion for it, if you love what you're doing, I think that's the secret. And then everything else falls into place. If you love what you're doing, you got to care about who you're supervising, who you're giving orders to, who you're trying to take care of. Are you care about their diet, about their sleep, about their schoolwork, and all those other things that go with the job? And so, well, you can say, well, recruiting is difficult, especially on the college level. That's what it's all about, really, unfortunately. Years ago, when I first started, any youngster who wanted to come up for track and field at the University of Minnesota had that opportunity. We can't do that anymore.
Although I think of the man I was married to who died that you know well, Ron Dawes, and I remember when he was in college and he was a student under the former coach, Jim Kelly. I guess Ron was running and Kelly said, "Get off the track, you're going to trip up Buddy Edlin." And here Ron went on to be an Olympian, but he wasn't a star person. And I've always thought, wow, a good coach you would think would want to encourage anyone who had, as you say, the purpose and the passion.
I think you have to love every kid on your team, whether they're number
even if
1
they're
or 55th.
Talented
right?
looking or not, right?
You have to encourage all, so that they improve, whether they improve from nothing to a little something, and everybody has God-given talent, you know.
It's one of the hardest things for me to kind of envision, though, how a coach can work with a whole team and then also encourage individual students or runners or basketball players.
Well, you have to look at it this: individuals make a team.
Right.
Team make individuals. It's a two-way street, see? It's not I, it's we. And we is also I. So it's just like a good cake. If you leave out the baking soda, whatever, the cake's going to fall and you're not going to have what you want.
You had a couple teams that just were tremendous in terms of cross country. One was the 1964 team that won the Big Ten championship, and you'd only been there, what, a year and a half or 2 years when they won. What do you remember about that team that was special?
Well, they were a group of most of the kids were from around the metropolitan area, Minneapolis and St. Paul. A couple of kids from Osseo and a couple of kids from Minneapolis Southwest and so on and so forth. And they just have the chemistry. They were fun to be with, Mary, and it just, those things happen.
So chemistry.
The chemistry, the enthusiasm. This one kid by the name of Dick Afton from Osseo, Minnesota, who Jim Dean was his coach. I always appreciated a high school coach who sent me athletes.
I bet.
And Jim Dean was one of those. Al Haley from Minneapolis Southwest was another one. But they really made those kids, and I had the pleasure of benefited from it,
Is that true, too? You had a great team in '68 that were champions. Did they have the chemistry, too?
Oh, yes, and they were all within 150 miles of Minneapolis, of the university. The furthest one was Gary Bjorklund from Proctor, Minnesota. And they came from Southwest, they came from Burnsville, they came from the other suburban schools, Edina, and they just meshed. And of course, Gary Bjorklund was the leader. He made those guys go.
And for those who may not know Gary Bjorklund's name, he also was an Olympian. And,
Yes, he was. Yes, he was.
And are you still in touch with him?
Yes, he does. He lives in Colorado Springs, and Gary's in good health and has a nice family. When you talk about the 1968 track and field team, we had a reunion 2 years ago. They came from all over the United States. And Marty Johnson, who is a lawyer in Minneapolis and St. Paul, had one of the MC spots. And of the 13 guys that got points in that competition, they were either teachers, doctors, or lawyers, or ministers.
So high achieving, not only as athletes, but as professionals.
It's the same, Mary. If you excel in sport, you can also excel in other avenues of your life. And that it was it's so very true in anything you do, in love, and the way you raise your family, the way you do your schoolwork, all those things.
Do you think most people get that? Do most people understand that transference?
No, they don't. It happens and they don't even know it's happening. But I think after a while you may get a grasp of it. I always like to reflect my life on anything that my mother did was unbelievable. And she instilled that work ethic, the camaraderie, the companionship, the love for everybody that you have to have in any walks of life.
She lived, you said, to be 93.
Yes.
Then she saw you achieve as a coach.
Yes.
Was she thrilled?
Well, my
she
mother was
understand?
rather sickly, and when she got older, she probably didn't. She was still trying to make a living. She became a seamstress and a nothing, and ended up a little business. Made enough money to buy a fur coat and a fur hat that she wore till her dying day. And those things that she instilled in her children, like mothers do, more than fathers.
A wonderful parent of either sex is the greatest gift, isn't it?
Yes.
One last question. We're almost out of time. How do you think we can inspire young people to become greater athletes than they might become better students? What do we need to do to turn kids on to achieving?
Marion, I touched upon that just a little bit previously. I think we have to have educational experiences early in life, not when they get to be in the 7th grade or 8th grade or 9th or 10th. when they're kindergarten and teach them skills early, whatever they may be, whether it's math or science, physical fitness, and so on. Start early, but you have to provide the facilities, the instruction. You know, most parents think, you know, I can remember when I was teaching in high school, we had a young man by the name of Delver Daly, who was the NCAA champion in the flying rings at the University of Minnesota. And he was the head of the physical education department in St. Louis Park Public Schools in junior high. He had a system for grading that you had to achieve certain skills to achieve a certain grade. Now, if you did not perfect the forward roll in gymnastics, in his class, in the class, he had a model that he used to grade. We did it for dribbling. We did it for basketball, for throwing a ball, for running from one point to another point, for anything we did. So when the mother came to school and she said, "Johnny, you got an F in physical education. How come?" "Well, Mom, he can't do anything." It's simple as that. It's the same thing in the math class or English. And that's the way physical education should be taught.
So
now,
specific
if you do that,
goals.
yes, if you do that in the third, when they're 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, you're going to have athletes. You're not going to have obesity. You're not going to have a lot of ills that we have at the present time.
And you don't think that's pushing kids too hard, too young?
No, no. You have to learn and love things. You know, little Johnny, when he gets to be in the 7th grade and he's overweight, he's not going to love to play basketball or dance or square dance or anything else. He will not do it.
We are out of time, Roy. It's so obvious that you have loved your career, and that's so inspiring. I mean, that's wonderful to see, and thank you so much for giving that passion to so many other Minnesota kids. That's been wonderful. I will have to say goodnight, but thank you all for joining us. We'll be back again next week. Until then, have a good week.